Danny Cole was eating breakfast in the station cafeteria when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his spoon and looked around at the 800 other beings sharing the meal hall, clicked their mandibles in confusion, turned pale blue with worry. The flickered dimly as stress ran through their crystal bodies. Danny was one of only 2 humans on Horizon's edge, and right now he felt very far from home. The research station floated in deep space, far from any planet or star. 12 different species worked here together, studying an ancient artifact they had pulled from a dead world 6 months ago. Danny was which meant he studied alien life forms. His job was to understand how different species worked, how their bodies functioned, and how to keep them healthy. It was not an exciting job most days. Today was about to become very different. Vance found him in the corridor as everyone rushed toward their emergency stations. She was the other human on board, a young engineer who kept the station's air and water and power running smoothly. Her brown hair was tied back and her eyes were wide with concern. "They breached the sealed chamber," she said. "The one inside the artifact. Something got out." Danny felt cold spread through his chest. The artifact was millions of years old, left behind by a civilization that had died long before any current species learned to walk. The scientists had been careful, so very careful, but apparently not careful enough. He made his way to the medical bay where was already preparing beds. She was, with smooth blue skin that you could see through if the light was right. Her large dark eyes met his as he entered, and she gestured with webbed fingers toward the door. "Is bringing the first patients," she said. Her voice was soft and musical the way all voices were. "They collapsed in the artifact chamber, all of them." Arrived moments later carrying 2 unconscious in his forearms. The senior scientist was tall and thin with compound eyes that saw everything at once. He was breathing hard, which Danny had never seen him do before. Did not tire easily. "We do not know what it is," said as he laid the patients on beds. "Microscopic organisms, perhaps, released from a sealed container when we opened the chamber. They are everywhere now. The air circulation has spread them through the entire station." Danny helped attach monitoring equipment to the unconscious scientists. Their vital signs were wrong. Everything was wrong. Fever, dropping blood pressure, organs beginning to fail. Whatever this was, it worked fast. Within 6 hours, the medical bay was full. Beings from every species on the station filled the beds and then the floors and then the corridors outside. Danny worked without stopping, moving from patient to patient, trying to understand what was killing them. The medical team joined them, then the healers, then anyone with any medical training at all. Nothing worked. Every treatment they tried failed. The pathogen, whatever it was, ignored their medicines and continued destroying its hosts from the inside. Danny noticed something strange around hour 4. He felt tired, which was normal. He felt a little warm, which made sense given how hard he was working. But he did not feel sick. Not really. Just a slight headache, a small ache in his muscles. Reported the same thing when she stopped by to check the medical bay's power systems. "I thought I was getting it too," she said quietly, standing in a corner where no one else could hear. "But I feel better now. Everyone else is getting worse." Danny looked around the room at the dying aliens and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Why were the humans different? He did not have time to think about it. The station commander called an emergency meeting via the communication system. The leader was a tall being made of living crystal, and his voice usually rang like bells. Now it was dull and flat. "We are implementing full quarantine," announced. "No ships may approach. No one leaves. We have sent word to the Galactic Union, but help is far away. We must survive until it arrives." The death toll reached 50 by hour 8, then 100 by hour 12. Danny stopped counting after that because the numbers hurt too much and there was too much work to do. Worked beside him through the night, her blue skin growing paler and paler. She was sick too, Danny realized. She was dying too, but she kept working, kept trying to save others even as the disease ate away at her own body. "You should rest," Danny told her. "So should you," she replied with a weak smile, "but neither of us will." Found them near dawn, if you could call it dawn on a station with no sun. The scientist was swaying on his feet, his compound eyes clouded and unfocused. He had been running analysis on the pathogen all night, trying to find a weakness they could exploit. "I have discovered something," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "The pathogen targets a specific protein structure, a structure that exists in all spacefaring species we have ever encountered, all of them except one." Danny felt's hand grip his arm. Humans, continued. Your species evolved with a similar protein, but it mutated millions of years ago. You are immune. You and are the only beings on this station who will not die from this plague. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for everyone except Danny. He opened his mouth to respond, to say something, anything that might offer hope. Collapsed before he could speak. The scientist fell forward and Danny caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. His compound eyes were still open, but they saw nothing now. Danny checked for a pulse and found one, weak and thready, still alive but not for long. Danny looked up at the patients filling every space around them, at the chaos of a station full of dying people. 2 humans, 845 aliens, and a disease that would kill everyone but them. He did not know yet that he would barely sleep for the next week. He did not know that he would give his own blood until he collapsed. He did not know that the entire galaxy would one day watch recordings of what happened on Horizon's edge and wonder at what humans were truly made of. All Danny knew in that moment was that these people were going to die unless someone saved them, and he was the only one left standing who could try. He squeezed hand once, then stood up and got back to work. 48 hours after the chamber was opened, Horizon's edge had become a place of death. The corridors that once buzzed with conversation in a dozen different languages were now silent except for the soft moans of the dying. 200 beings had already passed. Another 400 lay in beds and on floors, their bodies slowly failing as the ancient plague consumed them. Danny had not slept. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw another patient take their last breath. So he kept his eyes open and kept moving, one bed to the next, one patient to the next, doing everything he could think of to buy them more time. Worked alongside him when she was not running between sections of the station, keeping power flowing to the medical equipment. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her hands were steady as she helped Danny change fluid bags and adjust monitors. The life support in the eastern wing is failing, she told him during one of her brief stops in the medical bay. I had to shut it down. There was no one left alive there to save. Danny nodded but did not speak. There were no words for this. Was still alive, but barely. Danny had moved her to a bed near the main treatment area so he could check on her between other patients. Her blue skin had turned almost gray, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. When Danny approached, her dark eyes found his face and she tried to smile. You look terrible, she whispered. You should see the other guy, Danny replied. It was a human joke, one that did not translate well but laughed anyway. The laugh turned into a cough that shook her whole body. Danny held her hand until the coughing stopped. Her webbed fingers were cold in his grip. I found something in the research, she said when she could speak again. Before I got too sick to work, the pathogen is not natural. It was designed, engineered, a weapon from the civilization that built the artifact. A weapon against who? Everyone? His eyes were sad. They built it to kill all intelligent life. They must have released it on themselves too, by accident or on purpose. That is why they are gone. That is why their world was dead. Danny absorbed this information slowly. A civilization millions of years old had created the perfect plague, and now it was loose on his station. The only reason he and were still healthy was a random mutation that happened to human ancestors long before they climbed down from trees. Luck, pure stupid luck. Summoned Danny to the command center that afternoon. The commander was lying on a bed that his officers had brought in so he could keep working. His crystal body, once bright and shimmering, was now dull and dark. The light inside him was dying. The Galactic Union has received our message, said. His voice was so weak that Danny had to lean close to hear. Ships are on their way, medical teams, scientists, but they cannot break quarantine. If this plague reaches other stations, other worlds, it could kill trillions. I understand, Danny said. No, you do not. Not yet. Reached out and gripped Danny's arm with a hand that felt like cold glass. I am transferring command authority to you. You are the highest functioning being on this station. You must lead until help arrives or until everyone else is dead. Danny wanted to argue, to say that he was just not a commander, not a leader, but he looked at its dimming eyes and saw the truth there. There was no one else. The other officers were dead or dying. The department heads were the same. Danny and were the only ones still standing. I accept, he said quietly. A communication came through from the quarantine perimeter that evening. A Galactic Union medical coordinator named Myra Hayes appeared on the screen, her human face a welcome sight even through the distortion of the long-range signal. "We are analyzing the data you sent," Myra said. "Your blood samples, your scans of the pathogen, everything. We are working as fast as we can to find a treatment." "Work faster," Danny replied. He did not mean to sound harsh, but exhaustion had stripped away his social filters. "People are dying every hour." "I know." Myra's voice was gentle despite his rudeness. "Danny, you need to rest. You cannot save them if you collapse." "I will rest when they stop dying." He cut the communication and went back to the medical bay. Was worse. Her breathing had become a wet rattle that Danny recognized from too many patients already. He sat beside her and took her hand again. "I wanted to study the ancient ones," she said softly. "That is why I took this assignment, to understand a species that died so long ago. I did not expect to join them." "You are not going to die," Danny said. "Danny," her dark eyes found his face. "You are a terrible liar, but I appreciate the effort." He stayed with her as the hours passed, holding her hand and talking about nothing and everything. She told him about her home world, about the warm oceans and the cities that floated on giant lily pads. He told her about Earth, about rain and mountains and the smell of pine trees. They talked until her voice gave out and all she could do was listen. Near midnight, squeezed his hand one last time. "Save the others," she whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," Danny said. She smiled, closed her eyes, and did not open them again. Danny sat with her body for a long time. He did not cry because there was no time for tears and no room in his chest for anything except the cold weight of duty. 201 dead now. He had made a promise to, and he intended to keep it. He stood up, stretched his aching muscles, and walked to the next patient, an elderly who was struggling to breathe. Danny adjusted the oxygen flow and checked the monitors and made notes on the chart. Then he moved to the next bed, and the next, and the next. Found him 4 hours later, still working, still moving from patient to patient with mechanical precision. "Danny, you need to stop," she said. "Just for an hour, please." "I cannot stop," he replied without looking at her. "If I stop, they die faster." "You will kill yourself." Danny finally turned to face her. His eyes were red and his face was gray, and his hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. "Then I will die trying to save them," he said. "That is what humans do." He turned back to his work and did not try to stop him again. 96 hours without sleep. Danny had stopped counting meals or rest breaks because there had been none. His body moved on pure willpower now, his muscles screaming with every step, his vision blurring at the edges. 600 beings had died. Only 89 remained alive, and all of them were critically ill. Had collapsed the life support in most of the station to save power for the medical bay. The empty corridors were cold and dark now, filled with nothing but the bodies they had not had time to move. She worked without complaint, crawling through maintenance tunnels and rewiring systems that were never designed to run this long under this much strain. Danny stood in the center of the medical bay, surrounded by dying aliens, and felt despair creeping at the edges of his mind. He pushed it away. There was no time for despair. There was only the next patient, the next treatment, the next attempt to keep someone alive for one more hour. Was still breathing, though barely. The scientist had not regained consciousness since he collapsed, but his forearms sometimes twitched as if he was dreaming. Danny checked his vital signs every hour, hoping for improvement that never came. The breakthrough happened by accident. Danny was drawing blood from himself to run yet another comparison test when he noticed something on the scanner. His blood was fighting the pathogen, not just resisting it, but actively destroying it. The human antibodies that his immune system had created were tearing the ancient plague apart. He stared at the results for a long moment, his exhausted brain struggling to understand what he was seeing. Then it clicked. Human blood could slow the disease, maybe even stop it. If he could give transfusions to the sickest patients, he might be able to buy them enough time for a real cure to arrive. Danny did not waste time thinking about the risks. He found a transfusion kit, set up the equipment besides bed, and put the needle in his own arm. His blood flowed through the tube and into this body, carrying antibodies that had evolved on a planet none of these aliens had ever seen. Within an hour's vital signs improved slightly. Not much, but enough to prove the theory. Danny moved to the next patient and did it again, and again, and again. He lost count of how many times he gave blood that day. found him pale and shaking, still working, still giving more than his body could safely spare. "Danny, stop," she begged. "You are killing yourself." "They need it more than I do," he replied. His voice was slurred and his hands would not stop trembling. "You cannot save them if you are dead." He ignored her and moved to the next patient, a young who reminded him of. Her blue skin was almost white now, and her breathing was barely there at all. Danny set up the transfusion and let his blood flow into her veins. Galactic Union vessels had arrived at the quarantine perimeter, their lights visible through the station's windows like distant stars. They could not approach. They could only watch and wait and hope. Danny knew they were observing, recording everything that happened on Horizon's edge. He did not care. Let them watch. Let them see what one human could do when he refused to give up. Woke briefly that evening. His compound eyes were clearer than they had been in days, and his voice was stronger when he spoke. "The human," he said when he saw Danny working nearby. "Still standing, still fighting." Danny knelt beside his bed. "How do you feel?" Like death warmed over, as you humans say. Managed a weak click of his mandibles that might have been a laugh. "But I am not dead yet. That is your doing." "Save your strength," Danny told him. "I must record this." Fumbled for his data pad with one of his 4 arms. "The galaxy must know what I have witnessed. A single human running the entire medical operation of a station, giving his own blood to save species he barely knows, refusing to rest even as his body fails. I am just doing my job." "No," compound eyes fixed on Danny's face. "You are doing something far beyond duty. I have studied humans for decades. I thought I understood your species. I was wrong. I did not understand at all." Danny did not have time to respond. Another alarm sounded, another patient crashing, and he was on his feet and running before his mind caught up with his body. The night was the longest of his life. 3 more patients died despite everything he did. 71 remained. Danny kept giving blood until physically stopped him, forcing him to eat something and drink water before he continued. His body was running on empty, his reserves completely depleted, but still he would not stop. Near dawn he collapsed. One moment he was checking a patient's vital signs. The next moment he was on the floor, the world spinning around him, darkness eating at the edges of his vision. He heard screaming his name, but he could not answer, could not move, could not do anything except lie there and watch the ceiling blur above him. Dragged him to an empty bed and hooked him up to fluids. His body had nothing left to give, blood pressure dangerously low, heart rhythm unsteady. He had pushed himself past every human limit and his body was finally shutting down in protest. "You stupid, stubborn man," said through tears. "You cannot save them if you die." Danny wanted to argue, to get up and get back to work, but his body would not obey. The darkness closed in and took him under, and for the first time in 4 days, Danny Cole slept. But even unconscious, even on the edge of death, his work was not done. Wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and turned to face the medical bay full of dying aliens. She was an engineer, not a doctor. She did not know how to save them, but Danny had shown her the basics, and she would not let his sacrifice be for nothing. She picked up his data pad, read his notes, and walked to the first patient. 71 beings still alive, 1 human unconscious, 1 human terrified but determined. Got to work. Danny drifted in darkness, his unconscious mind filled with faces of the dead. Smiled at him from across a field of earth flowers that she had never seen in life. Stood beside her, whole and healthy, his compound eyes bright with curiosity. Hundreds of others gathered behind them, beings from every species on the station, all watching Danny with expressions he could not read. "You tried," said softly. "That is what matters." "Trying is not enough," Danny replied. "I promised to save you." "You saved as many as you could. No one could ask for more." The dream shifted. Danny was back on Earth now, standing in the hospital where he had failed years ago. A patient on a table, flatlined, nurses looking at him with disappointment in their eyes. He had frozen during a critical surgery. His hands had refused to move. The patient had died because Danny Cole had been too afraid to act. That was why he left Earth. That was why he joined the Galactic Union and took a job on a station far from home. He was running from his failure, trying to prove to himself that he could be better, that he could be brave when it mattered. The dream dissolved into light, and Danny opened his eyes. Sitting beside his bed, her face pale with exhaustion but alive with relief when she saw him wake. How long? Danny asked. His voice was a dry croak. 18 hours, you almost died, your heart stopped twice. Eyes were red from crying. I thought I lost you. Danny tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His whole body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. But he forced himself upright anyway, ignoring the pain, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to pull him back under. The patients, he said, how many? 71 when you collapsed, 68 now, I did what I could. Voice broke slightly. I am not a doctor, Danny. I did not know what I was doing. I just followed your notes and hoped for the best. You did perfectly. Danny reached out and squeezed her hand. 68 alive means you saved lives while I was out. That is more than I could have asked. He swung his legs off the bed and stood on shaking limbs. Protested, tried to push him back down, but Danny was already moving toward the nearest patient, a child whose crystal body flickered weakly with fading light. Danny, please, you need more rest. Rest is for people who are not watching others die. He checked the child's vital signs and adjusted the treatment. Better, slightly better. Every small improvement was a victory. A communication came through from the Galactic Union vessels at the quarantine perimeter. Myra Hayes appeared on screen, her human face showing both worry and hope. We have developed a treatment, she said. Based on your blood samples and antibody analysis, we can synthesize what your immune system produces naturally. It is not a cure, but it should stop the pathogen's progression. Danny felt something loosen in his chest. Hope, actual hope for the first time in days. How soon can you get it to us? He asked. Myra's face fell slightly. That is the problem. We cannot enter quarantine space. We would have to manufacture the treatment on our ships and then find a way to deliver it without direct contact. Our estimates say 48 hours minimum. 48 hours. Danny looked around the medical bay at the dying patients. Most of them did not have 48 hours. There must be another way, he said. Stepped forward, her engineer's mind already working on the problem. What if we modified the atmospheric system? The station's air handlers can distribute particles throughout the entire station. If we could aerosolize the treatment, we could deliver it through the air directly to every patient at once. Myra considered this. It could work, but you would need to receive the treatment formula, synthesize it in your medical lab, and then modify your atmospheric systems to deliver it, all while maintaining patient care. It would take both of you working constantly. Then we work constantly, Danny said. Send the formula. The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. Worked on the atmospheric modification while Danny synthesized the treatment in the medical lab. His hands shook and his vision blurred, but he refused to stop. 58 patients remained now. Every hour of delay meant more deaths. Was conscious again, his recovery the fastest of any patient thanks to the multiple blood transfusions Danny had given him. The scientist could not move from his bed, but he could talk. He kept his recording device running, documenting everything he witnessed. The human has been awake for only 6 hours after nearly dying, narrated quietly. He's working to save beings who are not his species, who are not his family, who many humans would consider strangers. I have seen commanders give less effort for their own soldiers. I have seen doctors abandon patients when hope seemed lost. But this human does not stop. He does not even slow down. Danny heard the recording but did not respond. There was no time for conversation. The treatment synthesis required precision, and his exhausted hands were barely capable of precision anymore. He forced himself to focus, to be careful, to get it right. Finished the atmospheric modification as Danny completed the treatment synthesis. They loaded the aerosolized medicine into the air handlers and prepared to activate the system. 58 patients watching with whatever awareness they had left. 2 humans standing at the controls, hoping desperately that this would work. Ready? Danny asked. Ready, replied. He activated the system. The station's air handlers hummed to life, drawing in the treatment and pushing it through every vent, every corridor, every room. The medical bay filled with a fine mist that smelled faintly of something Danny could not identify. Alien medicine designed from human blood. They waited. Minutes stretched into hours. Danny moved from patient to patient, checking vital signs, looking for any change. Monitored the atmospheric systems to ensure continuous delivery. Near midnight, the first patient showed improvement. Whose fever broke suddenly, whose breathing became easier, whose vital signs stabilized for the first time in days. Then another patient improved, and another. Danny allowed himself one moment of relief before returning to work. The treatment was working, but 58 patients still needed care. 58 beings who would die if he stopped now. He checked the next bed, adjusted the next treatment, and kept moving. The night was long, but for the first time since the plague began, Danny Cole felt something other than despair. He felt hope. 168 hours after the plague began, the dying stopped. The atmospheric treatment held the pathogen in check, and the patients who had survived this long finally stopped getting worse. Danny spent another 72 hours in constant care, stabilizing the survivors and ensuring the treatment continued to work. When the Galactic Union medical teams were finally cleared to board the station, they found 2 exhausted humans and 52 living beings from 9 different species. 795 beings had died. Danny carried that number like a weight in his chest, but 52 had survived, and that was 52 more than would have lived without him. 52 families that would not receive death notices. 52 beings who would go home to their worlds and live their lives. It was not a victory, but it was something. The Galactic Union quarantine lasted another month while scientists ensured the pathogen was completely neutralized. During that time, recordings spread across the galaxy. Every major news network carried the story. An unknown human who had given his own blood, worked without sleep for days, and refused to give up even when his body collapsed. 6 months later, Danny stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Union, surrounded by representatives from all 12 species that had served on Horizon's edge. He wore a simple medical uniform because he did not own anything fancier. Stood beside him in her engineer's jumpsuit, looking as uncomfortable as he felt. The Union's highest civilian honor was called the Star of Compassion. It was given only to those who showed extraordinary selflessness in service to others. In 500 years of Galactic Union history, it had been awarded 17 times. Danny Cole was about to become the 18th recipient, and the first human ever to receive it. Stood at the podium, his crystal body shining bright again after months of recovery. The commander had insisted on presenting the award himself, despite still needing assistance to walk. "When the plague struck Horizon's edge, I expected to die," said, his voice ringing through the vast hall. "We all expected to die. The pathogen was designed to kill every intelligent species in the galaxy, and it very nearly succeeded, but we did not account for humans." A murmur ran through the assembly. Representatives from species that had never met humans leaned forward in their seats, curious about these small beings from a backwater planet. "I transferred command to Danny Cole because there was no one else," continued. "He was not a leader, not a soldier, not a hero. He was just a man who happened to be immune to a plague that was killing everyone around him. He could have done nothing. He could have waited for rescue and let nature take its course. No one would have blamed him." Paused, his crystal eyes fixed on Danny. Instead, he worked without rest for days. He gave his own blood until his heart stopped. He saved 52 lives through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "I have commanded soldiers who would not show such dedication for their own families. Danny Cole showed it for strangers." The hall fell silent. Danny felt every eye on him and wished he could disappear. "Recorded everything," said. "I have watched those recordings many times, and I have come to a conclusion that I wish to share with this assembly. For centuries, the Galactic Union has classified humans as a primitive newcomer species, useful for certain tasks but not essential to our civilization. We were wrong." Another murmur, louder this time, raised a hand for silence. "I propose that humans be reclassified as essential partner species, with full representation in all Union councils and operations. I have seen what humans are capable of when they choose to care. The galaxy needs that capability. The galaxy needs them." The vote was held immediately, as was Union tradition for matters of species classification. The result was unanimous. For the first time in history, a species was elevated to essential partner status based on the actions of a single individual. Danny walked to the podium to receive his medal and give his acceptance speech. He had written something long and proper, full of thanks and humility, and all the things people expected to hear at moments like this. But when he looked out at the thousands of beings watching him, he forgot every word. Instead, he said something simple. "I did what any human would do," Danny said quietly. "When people are dying and you can help, you help. That is not heroism. That is just being human." He stepped away from the podium. The hall erupted in applause that lasted for several minutes. Representatives from species Danny had never met approached him afterward, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about how his species had developed such unusual traits. Danny answered as best he could, though he still did not understand what the fuss was about. Found him later, standing alone on a balcony overlooking the Union capital city. The lights of 1,000 different buildings stretched to the horizon, each one housing beings from dozens of species. Danny watched them and felt very small. "How do you feel?" asked. "Tired," Danny admitted, "and confused. I just did my job." "You did more than that and you know it," leaned against the railing beside him. "The whole galaxy is talking about us now, about humans. They want us on every station, every ship, every mission. They say we are the most reliable species in crisis situations. We are just stubborn. Maybe that is what the galaxy needs," smiled. "Stubborn people who refuse to give up when things look hopeless." Danny thought about her final words asking him to save the others. He thought about the 795 beings he could not save. He thought about the 52 who had lived because he was too stubborn to stop trying. "I have been offered a position on a new research station," he said. "They want a human specifically. Apparently we are in high demand now." "I got a similar offer, chief engineer on a deep space exploration vessel." Paused. "I told them I would only accept if they hired you too." Danny laughed, the first real laugh he had managed in months. Partners in stubbornness. "Someone has to keep you from working yourself to death." They stood together on the balcony, two humans looking out at a galaxy that had finally noticed them. Somewhere out there, other stations and ships were requesting human crew members. Other species were studying human history and biology, trying to understand what made them different. The plague of Horizon's Edge had killed 795 beings, but it had also changed the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. Danny Cole did not feel like a hero. He felt like a tired man who had done his best in an impossible situation. But maybe that was enough. Maybe being human meant doing your best even when it was not enough, even when hope seemed lost, even when your body was failing and your mind was screaming for rest. Maybe being human meant refusing to give up. Danny turned away from the balcony and walked back inside. There was work to be done, and he was ready to do it. That was what humans did.